Hey, welcome to the Restoration Soul Care Podcast, where we have honest conversations about faith, neuroscience, and hope. I'm Michael Camber, a relationship and recovery coach.
And I'm Nick Buddha, a mental health and relationship coach. If you feel stuck in shame, addiction, or pain, you don't have to face it alone. Join us for some real stories, real tools, and a real path forward. Let's dive in.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why we wanted to meet you at Chipotle was to assess that, to make sure you weren't a weirdo.
I appreciate that.
I'm kidding.
So what was like the consensus? It was like,
Actually, here, hold on.
Actually kind of weird.
You need to be a little bit of a weirdo to be on this podcast.
Yes.
Michael's very forthright with his love for Ninja Turtles, which we've covered.
Okay.
We have a mutual love for Lord of the Rings.
Nick has a closeted love for Pokemon. Mine's out in them.
Yeah, that's true.
He won't admit it.
I love that so much.
Yeah, so if you would, let's start by divulging what embarrassing nerd things that you're
Oh, jeez. Well, I don't know. Embarrassing nerd things. Well, my husband just said I was like a gamer. I do game.
Okay, what's your game? What do you play?
I do a lot of Resident Evil. Like that.
Let's
So
go.
I like the cinematic games. But sometimes I like we'll play Fortnite with like the kids and stuff. And that's kind of fun. So it just depends. I used to play Call of Duty and stuff with my brothers growing up.
Yeah, man.
So had some brothers. That was a good way for us to bond.
Years ago, I got really into this specific. Well, it wasn't Call of Duty. I played Call of Duty quite a bit, but there was a game. I don't know what possessed us to start playing this, but it was a Tom Clancy game. It was not Rainbow Six. It was. So, I don't know what it was. It was on PS3. Ghost Protocol.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that one.
Because it was so like slow.
Mm-hmm.
Like it wasn't Call of Duty or Halo where you're just like frantic and it's like how quick can you move the joystick. It was like sort of methodical and planned. It was a ton of fun. We got a lot of mileage out of it. But it was great. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know where I was going with all that, but yeah, that's.
Do you know what my go-to's been? Is Zelda. Michael knows this.
I just started playing Zelda.
Oh, which one?
I can't tell you, honestly. It's whatever the newest one is that we got on Switch. Because sometimes I'll take the
Tears
Switch
of the
with
Kingdom?
us whenever. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. That's
TOK.
That's what I'm on right now.
TOK.
Tickles of Tyler's Kisses. That's where that name came from.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Does Tyler know that?
Yes.
Do his kisses tickle?
I've never been kissed by Tyler.
Tyler, if you're listening, prepare yourself.
Yeah, none of this is
He's
going
gonna kiss you. Also, none of this is gonna air.
except for in our guys thread.
Hold on, before
I
we
think that
actually.
should air.
Hey, welcome back to the Restoration Soul Care Podcast. I'm Michael,
I am Nick.
and we're doing something different today because we like to mix things up.
Absolutely. So when most people talk about pornography or pornography struggles, they honestly just think of guys. But today we're talking with our friend Lindsay because we want to make a very important point, which is girls struggle too.
Yeah, that's true. And so if you're a woman and you're listening to this and you found us, great. We're glad you're here today. This is for you. We hope that this conversation blesses you, and let's get into it. Don't worry.
This is important after what we just said in terms of most people's association with any sexual struggle being a men's issue.
Yep.
Barna Research, in partnership with Pure Desire Ministries, did a lot of data compilation over the past few years. And so this is within the church. They found that 40% of women, this is ages 18 and up, report viewing pornography at some level. So this is more than just once, ongoing way. And by the way, I've looked at non-Christian statistics too, and it's about the same, about 40%.
Yeah.
Same research, same study also reports that women are generally more likely to see the behavior as a negative thing. And here's the key word with that. And then associate any interaction they have with it in a high level of shame. And here's what's interesting for me is, so this is a non-Christian stat. The Journal of Behavioral Addiction, so any compulsive disorder, and the studies that they've found with whether it be a substance addiction or a behavioral addiction, such as sexual addiction, they find specifically for sexual addiction, women are 4 times less likely to seek help, even though they are struggling. So, goodness, I'm going to probably put my own opinions here, but connecting those last 2 points, I think they're interrelated. I think that especially even in the church and within Christian culture, young ladies, women who maybe have a sexual related struggle, man, they're almost like, I don't know. In a way, in my mind, it's almost like secluded. It's like they're more prone to feel this propensity that I cannot talk about this. I can't seek help.
Yeah.
Which is, again, this is why I'm now jumping to our awesome guest. The reason why Michael and I want to do this episode is because we want to break through that barrier. We want to open this conversation more. One, to be helpful for the church, but also to individuals that this deeply affects their story and their life. So, finally, we get to this point.
Without further ado,
We would like to introduce our friend, Lindsay. Lindsay, thanks for being here.
Well, thank you guys for having me. It's
Yes.
such a blessing to be asked to be on here. So thank you guys.
So, high level stuff. You're a local Louisvillian, like Michael and I. By daytime, you are, well, I don't know if it's nighttime too, but you're an RN.
Yes. Yeah. Just daytime.
Daytime?
I don't do
Okay.
night shift anymore.
Yeah, you've done your time. Yeah.
Paid my dues.
Married to Jackson. I forgot, you said Louisville's not where you were.
Yes. Yeah.
Born.
I'm from London, Kentucky. It's like
Okay,
2.5 hours
yeah.
southeast from here.
Okay.
A little
Awesome.
bit smaller. Louisville was like the big city of Louisville to me.
Yeah,
growing
the
up.
metro.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can resonate with that. We got to obviously talk before this podcast. This is not completely new. You mentioned too, with some of your story, would you say you were born and raised in a Christian household?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we were, and by that, like, I mean, we went to church regularly, like every Sunday morning, every Sunday evening, every Wednesday evening. I even grew up going to a Christian school for most of my student career.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the topic of Jesus was a pretty normal topic
Yeah.
in my upbringing. And the truth is, in our small community, even though I know this isn't exactly true, it just seemed like everyone to some capacity identified as Christian.
Okay.
So it was pretty normal, and of course in my household too, to just identify as a Christian, grow up in that culture.
We talked a little bit about a common dynamic in Christian households, especially for our generation, which is like the lack of conversation on hard topics. Let me just be general like that. So like big, heavy emotions, struggles. What was that like for you young, growing up and just observing in your family? Like what do you do with hard conversations? What do you do with things that are perpetually shameful?
Yeah, for sure. You avoid them. No, that was absolutely...
We're still learning to break it.
Yep.
Right. I'm still waiting on those conversations.
Yep.
No, it was, I mean, definitely like that. Like in our culture, kind of growing up too, whether not just in my household, but even in the church or in my Christian school, there were definitely certain topics that were just almost too taboo or too sinful really to discuss. And of course, one of those big topics was sex, which, I'm sure maybe they did the best they could do. Maybe I don't know exactly why it was so avoided. But, even avoiding those topics was teaching us something. It was teaching us this is bad and uncomfortable, and we're not allowed to talk about it.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if it was just maybe if we don't talk about it, the kids won't struggle with it. Maybe they don't know how to discuss it. But I definitely saw that kind of growing up, that there were just certain topics we just avoided like the plague. And that was one of them.
Yeah. Michael and I have talked about too, like there's never, we never try to project condemnation on any generation, because if silence was kind of the MO, it's almost like for our parents, I think they were, maybe without even knowing it, operating out of their own sense of sexual shame and lack of support and help in their own formative years. Yeah. And a lot of them grew up in kind of either the crest or the resulting wave of the sexual revolution in the 60s and 70s, which we've talked a little bit about. And then purity culture came into effect too. So tell me specifically, though, with a Christian culture, do you remember even implicitly or just unconsciously, what was your view of the person of God or even Jesus himself based on what you were downloading in your culture and your home? And like, do you remember what that was like? I know it's somewhat of a deep question.
Yeah, no, for sure. To have grown up in a very, I guess, Christian household, I feel like, like I knew Jesus was loving and, God was loving, but I think it just seemed more like he was this, big God that maybe was just above loving me like as a one-on-one relationship, if that makes sense. I don't know. He just seems so out there to me, like this all-powerful God, which he is. But rather than viewing him more of like a friend or like really close-knit, loving father, he just seemed like this big God that he controlled the universe and he created everything, and we just trust things and abide by his rules. And that's kind of at least my upbringing. That's kind of how it seemed in my relationship with God was more like that, rather than like having like a very deep personal relationship with him.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, it does.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, as I say, I think it's a common, I always describe it as like God is this cosmic black robe deity that's just out there, and we know he's holy and has strong feelings about our behavior, but yeah, it's hard to personally grasp or connect with him. We're going right down to the nitty gritty.
Do it.
What was your first exposure to either sexual things, pornography, and how did you navigate that?
Yeah, so I will say it's kind of a loaded question, just because, especially as like a 28-year-old woman, I'm still learning things about my story, things that maybe I hadn't even thought about before, what was healthy versus unhealthy. So exact exposure, not really sure. But I will say my first conversation that I ever remember having about sex was when I was 8 years old, and I had gone to my Christian playground and asked my friends if anybody knew how to have babies. And one of my 8-year-old friends came up to me and she says, "I know," and she tells me it's sex. And she proceeds to tell me what sex is through the description of a sex film that she had found in her parents' home.
Oh, wow.
And I remember after that encounter being infatuated with whatever sex was. So after that, I do remember just kind of going out and seeking out more of, like, she said there was a film about it, so maybe TV shows and media. So I would go, home, and if making sure nobody was around, look for certain TV shows or movies that if they had sex scenes in them, then I would go and rewind those episodes over and over again, eventually progressing to looking up things on like YouTube and stuff. Which of course this was like 20 years ago. So like media wasn't as like, I didn't have a cell phone or anything, but just little things like that. Not understanding anything of what I was doing, just knowing this stuff felt good. And I was just wanting to think about it more. And then over time, maybe like middle school, high school, I don't know about guys, but as a woman, you start fantasizing almost constantly. It was just at the forefront of my mind almost constantly, especially with like the media and stuff that I was consuming. Eventually, maybe early high school, I started being introduced to more conversations. I started going to public school, where maybe more of the conversation of pornography, of what that was like introduced. And so I was under this impression that pornography was solely if you were looking at explicit websites. And so I thought, as long as I'm not doing those things, then it's got to be okay. But it's kind of hard exactly to pinpoint, when this went from like this childhood curiosity to being exposed inappropriately. Even the first conversation that I had with this girl was just, it doesn't seem appropriate now, but
Sure.
it kind of just spiraled, and I'm not exactly sure when or where.
Yeah.
Well, I think what you experience, I think is true for a lot of kids. Like as kids, we're just curious about the world and how everything works. Yeah. And especially I think when you're kids, there is some sort of curiosity around babies, because you're just like, what is this thing? This is a human, and they're just sort of sitting there making noises. Like they don't get up and move and crawl like I do. You can hold them. That's fun. Yeah. Right. It's sort of, I don't know. I'm remembering now, like when my daughter was younger, when first time she held a baby, she sort of treated it like a cat. It's like, what is this little thing? But naturally, you start asking, well, how did this thing get here? How did I get here? Yeah. And it's so interesting that like kids will engage other kids with those questions. But I'm curious, after you sort of had that conversation with your friend as an 8-year-old, what clicked internally for you in terms of what do I do with that? Like I know you just sort of outlined like your curiosity to keep looking for that. Was there any sort of like, this is interesting or strange or odd, maybe I should ask my parents about this, or like, what's up? Yeah.
So actually before that conversation, I had asked my mom.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah. So maybe that was like the first conversation. It just doesn't seem like it was a conversation. So
what did she tell you?
This is kind of funny. It's kind of funny. When I was in kindergarten, I asked my mom where babies came from, and thinking kind of quick on her feet, she was like, I'll tell you when you're older. And of course, as like a child, you're persistent. You're like, okay, when is older?
Yeah.
And so
Tomorrow?
she told me, I know, right? Yeah, I'm older now. But she told me that she would tell me in 3rd grade. I know she was probably thinking I was totally going to forget, but 3rd grade comes around and I did not forget this conversation.
For sure.
So I go up to my mom again. I said, you know, you told me you would tell me when I was in 3rd grade where babies came from. And I remember in that moment, she gets visibly agitated and just kind of muttering words. She doesn't really know what to say. And then she looks at me really frustrated and kind of snaps and says, Lindsay, I'm not going to tell you that. And she walks away. And from that point forward, I knew however it was that you made babies, we are not allowed to talk about it in this household.
Yeah.
So, of course, obviously that wasn't a good enough answer for me. So that's when I, of course, turned to my friends on the playground. And I mean, I don't remember at any point in time ever having a conversation about sex or any of those topics in my household from that point forward.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of shut off after that. So even after my exposure from my friend on the playground, I knew home was not a safe space to talk about those things.
That's so interesting because oftentimes, and I think about this as a parent too, because there's a limit of like what feels like it's appropriate to have some of these conversations with my kids.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other side of that, it's like I have to treat this in a way, or I have to communicate this in a way where I'm building trust with my kids so they know, like, yeah, Dad's a safe place to come talk about these things. He's going to tell me the truth. The hard part is when my kid will ask me a question about something and I'm unaware of my own pain or struggle or shame around that issue.
That's right.
Which is what makes me clam up. And what I'm struck by is, and this is true of my story too, and I'm sure it's true of Nick's, is that didn't start with you. It's like this goes back as far back as you want to go. Like your mom, even in some capacity, had some experience or history with that question and the subject of sex and where babies came from. And man, that's interesting how it was just like, nope, hard stop. That's a wall. We're not going there.
Yeah. No, and that was, and even just like seeing her discomfort with it. And I guess I just never pushed after that either.
There's no reason to.
No. Yeah. And the conversations were never offered after that either. But even not just, like our household too. Like I said, I grew up like in church. We never discussed it. In our Christian school growing up, they would literally have pasted shut the anatomy pages in biology books because they were just so uncomfortable with the idea of even talking about reproduction.
Wow.
And so that was teaching us things. That was teaching us, okay, we are not allowed to talk about this. So, of course, as peers, we're just going to be talking about it with each other.
Yep.
And do you think we're getting good information from one another?
Yeah, it's kind of like either
Probably
you teach us about this in a helpful way or we're going to figure it out in probably unhelpful ways.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. So all of my kind of sex education just came from peers or whatever I was learning through TV shows, movies, or media from that point on. But,
I'm curious, Lindsay, on the progression that a lot of individuals face. So we're speaking to guys and girls. It seems almost that the most common gateway is curiosity or unwanted conversations or exposure to some kind of content or conversation. And that's, again, maybe spurred on by personal curiosity. But I know for a lot of individuals, when going back to it feels like a repeated, like I feel more like drawn to it, or I find myself more dependent on it and really craving it. Those are informed by factors beyond curiosity, and it really has to do with what's going on in the person's heart. I don't even want to use the word their soul, like relationally, things that they're grappling with or hurting with, that this unique dynamic has a powerful draw to it. In your own reflection journey, as much as you want to share, have you thought about kind of what was going on in Lindsay's heart in her life, where you even said as you progressed through middle school, high school, and had various interactions with it, and sex in general, what were kind of the things that were going on in Lindsay's heart that this was responding to or this was connecting with?
Yeah, for sure. No, definitely whenever I think of my first exposure at like 8, I think, maybe it started with like curiosity and things. As far as even, and like I said, I'm still learning different pieces of my story.
For
so I
sure.
feel like every single time that I kind of reflect back, it's like there's just new things that are revealed to me. But I do think around middle school, high school, my family dynamic started to get very unhealthy. Maybe it was a little unhealthy before too, but it was very dramatically different than what it had been. And so I started really struggling in turn with that, with anxiety and depression, and just didn't feel like home was really a safe space for me, or at least emotionally. And so I definitely think even the safeness of, having these relationships in my head, or, whatever, this comfort, this intimacy was maybe something that was used as like a coping mechanism too. I didn't recognize it as that, of course, whenever I was going through that, but it was definitely like a safe space of even just being able to numb out and just go into this different world, So I definitely think with the struggle of like kind of mental health, which how things were changing so dramatically in my family at the time, that it was just becoming a safe space for me.
Okay, I'm breaking the fourth wall right now and saying we did not coach Lindsay in that answer or plant it anywhere. This is what's so beautiful about this, Lindsay, is like Michael and my overarching paradigm of seeing this struggle is it's what we call an intimacy disorder. It's whatever the behavior is, it's a relational replacement. Yeah. So we're pursuing something God-given and God needed in us, or that God has planted in us that we need. And it's a misdirection and a distortion of what our heart truly needs and craves. And so like, I'm not excited about it, but it's just so freeing when we say, hey, regardless of who you are, yes, there are unique aspects of your journey and your gender is important and informs the struggle. But at the same time, the way the enemy works is like selling this version of here's a good relational replacement option. Yeah. Like, our relationship's hard. Are they hurtful to you? You can go to this instead. Yeah. And using the word escape, Michael's made a really good point that honestly, you're not addicted to fill in the blank. You're addicted to escaping the hard nature of relationships. So just thanks for being vulnerable with that. Of course. I appreciate that. Yeah. Tying in, just to unpack a little bit more of your story, you mentioned to us that, even just viewing content, fantasizing, it didn't stop there, but it even translated into romantic sexual relationships with others. Do you see those two as connected? Do you see that as like, hey, my relationship with guys and the way I'm approaching that is informed by my history of how I've been pursuing sex? Or did you see that as two separate things? What would you say?
Yeah, the more that I dig in deeper to my story, the more I see of the correlation. But I will say it's like pretty recent that I'm even like seeing the correlation. Because even whenever I used to talk about my story, I thought it started more at like 17. Whereas like seeing the correlation of how, my exposure to media and stuff, I do think it like kind of correlates with things. I know I was speaking with you guys before when I was 17, that's when things kind of took a hard shift where I started being more outward with like different forms of sexual addiction and more promiscuity and things like that. But I think with my exposure at that point, especially with how fantasizing and then, watching these different things through media, was just kind of an escape for me. I already had like one foot out the door. So whenever I was exposed to being able to do or to have sex and romantic relationships or with different partners and things, it was almost, honestly, it felt freeing. It felt like this was something that had been playing in my mind for so long, and there's so much shame about that. But now it felt like I was able to kind of live out the things that I had been kind of dreaming about, which of course, long story short, it wasn't freeing. Sure. But I think because of my exposure to that point, it made it a lot easier to just engage in that. It wasn't a hesitation to even engage in that lifestyle.
It's from my point of view, even when I try to work with individuals, like what you just said makes sense in the sense of like there was a freedom or a greater level of impact on you, because it's like one thing to live in an individual space or a fantasy space and kind of somewhat experience those messages of like I'm desirable, I'm being affirmed in this, I'm in control of the situation. But then when you actually enter into an actual relational dynamic with another person, it really can communicate those messages. Again, they're broken and they're empty, but giving you a sense of, see, I'm significant. Like I'm desirable. I have control here. That makes total sense. All of that. You mentioned too, so that season, I wrote down when we had some awesome Chipotle. you weren't necessarily looking to, like, you weren't on this trajectory of like, oh, I think I need to reevaluate things. I don't know if I'm like going down a good path. It seemed to me when you told your story that God just intervened and stepped in. It's like, how was that experience for you when God began to open your eyes and pursue you to your core?
Yeah. So, like whenever
I love this idea of Psalm 23 where it's like God's goodness and mercy is pursuing us, running after us. And what I heard in your story is there was really a pivotal time that was pretty obvious that God is pursuing Lindsay and is not okay with her keep going down this direction.
Yeah.
What was that like? What happened?
Oh yeah, for sure. So, thinking on and off of like doing this lifestyle up until I was 22. But when I was 22 years old, I had been engaged in like kind of sexual addiction. And of course I didn't have language for that. I didn't, know there was like this sexual addiction with this. But I was definitely struggling up until that point with pornography and promiscuity and all kinds of different things, which was leading me into like a really deep, dark headspace. So even though I thought this was freeing and I thought this was bringing me confidence and joy, it was ultimately like putting me in this pit that I just, hated myself and I was full of shame and didn't really understand why. But I it's just in this dark place. But when I was 22, on no particularly special day, which is kind of wild to think about, but I remember being really angry. I had been in another circumstance, again, not unlike I had been in many times before. But I was just mad at myself, and I just remember like screaming all these questions of like, what is wrong with me? Like, why do I keep doing these things? What is wrong with me? What's wrong with Lindsay? And even though I wasn't really crying out to God, God met me where I was at and kind of answer those questions.
Yeah.
And it was almost as though in a moment he had given me this like supernatural clarity of understanding that the reason why I kept going to these behaviors and kept doing these things was because that's where my like identity and worth came from.
Yeah.
But what he wanted me to know in this moment was that my identity and worth needed to come from being his daughter. And he wasn't mad at me. He wasn't disappointed. He didn't turn his back on me. He just wanted me to pick myself up and try my best to live life like I was the daughter of the one true King. And so that kind of kickstarted this journey of being like, okay, God, I hear you. I know you're here. I didn't even really know where to go from that. It wasn't like all of a sudden I had this confidence of being, God's daughter, but it started this journey of understanding what that meant. And what it meant to not just trust God in this journey and trust God that I was his daughter and that I could live life like that, but to trust him with my sexuality too, and really just engage in this new journey of healing.
What's striking me about what you just said is the redirection of what you talked about earlier in your story, of the curiosity. In that moment, like there's this childhood innocence, that curiosity that opens you up. You learn something that set you on this trajectory, and then in this moment, when you were 22, God intervened in this way that reminded you who you were, and then it opened up your curiosity to move back toward God and say, well, what is possible for life and my sexuality, and what God has for me, and I that's so important, I think, to notice that connection, especially if you're listening and watching for this, because oftentimes we use the word hijacked when we talk about our natural God-given processes, things like curiosity and imagination and how we show up in a relationship. Those things all get hijacked by the enemy, and I'm going on a tangent here, but that blueprint is in Genesis chapter 3. Adam and Eve are deceived about who they are, right? Did God say? Well, he knows this won't actually happen. It's questioning like, you can't trust this guy. If you can't trust him, then you shouldn't identify with him. And then they trust the lie. They believe that. And their curiosity gets hijacked in the moment because they start going, really? Well, interesting. Their imagination gets hijacked in that. And then what do? They say, we're dirty, we're unclean, God's going to hate us if he finds out about this. So what do? They run and hide. And they do this really dumb thing where they try to cover themselves and go, okay, well, maybe God won't notice our nakedness either if we just cover ourselves like this. And anyway, what God comes to them, when he comes to them, his question isn't condemnation. It's not what did you do? It's where are you? Because he's looking to restore that relationship. And I think what you just shared is another beautiful, like, story of the work that God is trying to do in all of us, which is bring us back. Hey, direct your curiosity back toward me. Let's redeem your imagination so that you can move more toward who you are and who I've called you to be.
Lindsay, your story reminds me a lot of John chapter 4, this woman from Samaria who, whether we want to clinically look at it as a sexual addiction, definitely had a sexual struggle in her life, had a hard time maintaining relationships, was married multiple times and was at this point just living with a guy, and was so full of shame and that heaviness that I don't know if the two of you can relate someday in glory in heaven. But I think about how Jesus intentionally comes and knows about this conversation he's going to have with her. So he sends off the disciples into town, but he just sits alone with her as she is drawing water in isolation because she's trying to avoid the crowds, avoid being seen, avoid all the interaction. But what I love is Jesus' pursuit of her is not this, hey, let's just we need to do better. Like, let's get your life back in order. It's this reinforcement of his desire for her. And then using the water as an analogy to say, hey, I have what you're looking for. Like, you can keep drawing water, and the illusion is you can keep going to these relationships, but I am what you're longing for. Like, I'm the fountain of living water. And I desire you. I'm here for you. I know the track record, and that doesn't throw me off. I still desire you. And then even her testimony later in life is that point, like, come see the man who knew everything. And the implication is, and yet didn't approach me with this crazy condemnation or shamefulness, but loved me in the midst of that. What did God use practically, or maybe I should say present tense, what is God using practically to bring himself into healing into parts of your story and your journey?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think whenever I think of steps of like practical, and I know everyone's steps are kind of different, the big things that have helped me throughout my journey, first of all, I had a big identity issue. So I lean on scriptures for my identity, and the scriptural truths of what God says about me, not how I'm feeling about myself, because sometimes that's fickle. So leaning on scriptural truths for who I am, not how I'm feeling or how others are feeling about me or whatever the case is going on. Prioritizing mental health. I started seeking Christian counseling pretty early on in like that journey because it was just something that I knew God wanted for me. And so that was extremely healing, and being able to walk with a professional through that was really cool. And then a really big one is community. One thing that and I'll be honest, like from the beginning of my journey, I didn't really want to seek out community. Vulnerability seems scary. And then, you always, I don't know, some people may love, just seeking out community, but sometimes it feels like a chore for people. And so I felt like that kind of at the beginning, but I knew God wanted me to find people in my corner to help me spur me on to grow into what a good Christian woman looks like. So I got involved in small groups early on in my journey, and then still, this is 6 years into like this recovery journey of mine. Still prioritize community around me. Walking side by side with people. I think of scripture saying, confess your sins to one another, and how intimate of a relationship does that entail that we have with community? And so he doesn't want us just to have a bunch of, acquaintances around. He wants us to be intimate with one another, of sharing our struggles, of walking with each other, of carrying each other's crosses with one another.
Yeah.
And so as far as like practicality, getting out of our comfort zones to be able to pursue some of that community, or to pursue healing, to feel feelings that maybe we've been shoving down for a long time that are coming out sideways, doing things that maybe we don't want to do, but doing them because it's what we're called to do,
Are you smiling while I'm smiling? Because we didn't coach her to say anything.
Again, it's like, oh, okay, here it is again. We come to this. Michael and I don't do this randomly. It's actually like part of people's stories that this is the way God works, and the way, go figure, he's designed healing to work. I mean, we could do a whole other episode, Lindsay, I feel like, on specifically what community looked like. I mean, you shared it with us a little bit when we got together. But there's a lot to be said about these individuals that you've connected with and are still in relationship with were safe people who reinforced to Lindsay that you can bring it, and I'm with you.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not just in it for the easy conversation. I'm in it for the hard stuff too, and I'm gonna stick with you. Yeah, we just need to do another.
Yeah, we do this every time. It's either we block off 3 hours and like give enough time, I think, to really let all this stuff breathe, or it's like, hey, Lindsay, you want to come back like 6 more times in the next
that's right.
6 weeks? Which, you know, if you're up for it, man, we would love to have you back and continue this conversation.
Yeah.
But as we're wrapping up, man, if you're, you know, thinking about our listeners, if there are women who are listening who are maybe on the fence and are just like, yeah, this is my struggle too. Gosh, where do I start? What's like what's, if I'm turning this off and I'm going to go do something that's going to put me on a trajectory to start the change and transformation in my life that I desperately want, that I need, like what would your encouragement be?
Yeah. So my encouragement with first of all, taking those practical steps, you know, get out of your comfort zone to be able to seek community, and really be vulnerable with those things too. Because I know there's, like you guys were saying, there's so much shame that covers this for both men and women. But I definitely, based off of the women that I've worked with, like over the years, and even in my own story, there's just so much shame that covers this, that keeps us silent, that keeps us hidden. But not only do we need to pursue community, but pursue vulnerability with those things. And I know there's a risk factor with that sometimes, you know, you get burned with things. But if vulnerability breeds vulnerability. If we're not vulnerable, no one else is going to be vulnerable with us. And so someone has to start that. So as far as like women wanting to seek healing and to pursue these things, get involved with community and be vulnerable with someone. If you're struggling with this, if you're hearing this podcast, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's like my story, I need to tell someone, tell somebody. Go to your pastor, go to close friend, go to your parent, whomever, and be vulnerable. Share what you're struggling with so you can actually pursue healing, because that's what God wants from us. You know, I know John Mark Comer has a book, and I love one of the things that he says in his book was, we sin alone, but we heal together. And so I think that's like just such a beautiful like first step with things, because of course we have God and, you know, we have scripture and things, but oh my goodness, he designed us to be in community. And that starts with us leading with vulnerability, and actually feeling comfortable to share what we're going through, or being okay with being uncomfortable, sharing what we're going through in order to gain that community and gain that support and heal together.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I don't say, if you are a female listening out there and you're like, man, I don't know if I have a safe place to go to right now. I don't know if I feel comfortable talking to my pastor or small group leader or whatever, or whoever. I know Michael and I would love to offer ourselves to say, hey, we are connected to other female coaches, clinicians who can be a safe place to process this, even if it's just processing next steps. Of what does it look like to just be seen and received and say, we can walk with you. We're happy to do that. There's a easy way to reach out through our website. There's a form, and we would love to be a connector for you.
Thanks for joining us. I hope this conversation was really helpful for you. We love talking to Lindsay. Lindsay, we love that you're able to show up and just help women wherever they're at in this space. If they want to get in contact with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have an email. It's called hopeandhealing.groups@gmail.com. I had to think about that for a second.
So HOPE.
I know, right?
AND.
HEA.
Yeah, so it's all spelled out.
Yes.
.groups.
All spelled out, yes. But I also have a social media handle on Instagram, Lindsay, LINDSAY, and then Joy, JOYYY. I know I probably came up with that handle when I was
like, people take all the options we want, and then we got to get creative.
But oh my gosh, I would love for people to reach out to me, especially if you don't feel like you have like a safe space to talk to. It's like, I'm an open book, man. I'd love to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you. Beautiful.
We so appreciate Lindsay being here today again. And we look forward to more conversations, not just with this dynamic, but others in the future with guests. So again, if you want to reach out for anything or have questions on what we talked about, or would like to hear about a specific aspect of this area, please just let us know. Our handles as well, at Nick W. Buddha.
At Mike Camber with a K.
That's it.
Speaking of Instagram handles, I never go by Mike. But the three other Michael Cambers that are out there, they go by Michael. Anyway, doesn't matter. Lindsay, we have a tradition on here that we've never done with a guest, so I'm throwing this at you right now.
It's a tradition.
This is
We
getting
always
dangerous.
end the episode by saying, "Don't do this alone," and we try to say it in unison because it's the lamest thing I think that we could possibly do. So if you're up for it,
Yeah.
we'll count to 3, and then we'll all say, "Don't do this alone."
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
Don't do this alone.
All right, see you next
We
time.
did it.
Hey, thanks for joining us today. If you found this helpful, do us a huge favor and subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. Or, better yet, send this to someone who needs encouragement.
For more tools, resources, and information about our coaching, check out rscky.com. Keep showing up.
Yeah,
We'll catch you next time.